Good morning, Paul. Great to talk to you today.
Good to talk to you. I'm wondering if because a lot of what she has, and when she gets into these things, is ethereal to the point. It's almost like she's a time traveler, but she doesn't know if she's from the future or the past. It is absolutely bizarre. How you doing, sir?
I am great. And you're exactly right. Our current vice president is the expert on word salad. She just says things and strings words together that make no sense whatsoever, and just goes to show her complete unpreparedness for the job she currently serves as vice president, and she would be even a much worse president if she were to be elected in November.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to age well as far as her PR from now through the November election. One other side note here before we get off talk more about the Secret Service. There is talk that Buttigieg is leading. Is that what you've heard as far as the VP is concerned, or is there any scuttlebutt in Washington?
I really haven't heard much and really haven't focused on it. Have been much more focused on the events that occurred in Butler, Pennsylvania a week and a half ago. Of course, we've got Prime Minister Netanyahu will be in delivering a speech before joint session of Congress tomorrow. But so as far as the VP scuttlebutt and who may be leading and where that is, you'd probably have to talk with somebody else. Maybe Benny Thompson is somewhere in the mix on who the Democrats are choosing, but I've not been really hearing much so far on who the lead would be for them for their selection of VP.
We'll get Benny on line one.
There you go. That's right. We'll get him on the other line.
Yeah. Tell me about your visit there.
Look, we had a great visit to Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday. There were a group of about 9 members of the Committee on Homeland Security who flew to Pittsburgh Sunday night, stayed the night, and then Butler, Pennsylvania. It was about 45-minute drive from where we were staying in Pittsburgh, and we were actually boots on the ground. And so we were there. Even though the stage had been disassembled, they had marked the location of where the stage was set up, where President Trump was standing at the time that he was shot. And then we were able to view the building, which was roughly 150 yards, Paul, I would say, to the president's right-hand side. We were able to go see how someone could have accessed that building. We're able to get up on the roof and see that the building was not a sloped building. It had a slight slope, but not what the Secret Service director was describing. And it was very eye-opening. We probably came away with more questions than answers when we left yesterday.
There was one comment from someone, I forget who it was, talking about, and we had a cut from him also, talking about Fallon, it was Congressman Fallon, talking about the slope on there in comparison to where the snipers were on a real slope. He said the slope that she decided was too bad was even ADA compliant. And one of the cohorts in your entourage was a 70-year-old guy who said it was no problem for him to walk up there, and that was just a travesty that she even used that as an excuse.
You know, you're exactly right. Carlos Jimenez is the member that you're referring to, the 70-year-old member from South Florida. He got up there. He was able to easily walk across that roof. You know, there is no excuse for the Secret Service for not having that strategic position. So you have an elevated position with a direct line of sight on the stage where the president will be speaking. And there's no excuse for that location not to have been secured. Now, we've seen, Paul, reports, and these reports have, I was hearing these reports the day after the shooting. They later came to light publicly and were admitted by the Secret Service that there have been repeated requests leading up to July 13th by Trump's security detail for additional resources, and those resources were denied. And so when the Secret Service does not have the resources that they need, they're at that time forced to rely more heavily on local law enforcement. And this was clearly a complete failure, a failure in planning, a failure to carry out the plan that they had put in place, and a failure in leadership by those at the highest level of the Secret Service, particularly the director herself.
And she had no answers for this. Have you found out any scuttlebutt within your group there? Anybody know who this guy in the gray suit was that climbed the ladder and asked the local police, "Hey, send me those pictures. I'm with the ATF." Nobody knows who this guy is.
No, and that's the thing. We've requested a great deal of information. So far, we've not gotten any information back. And so as you begin to get things, and as people start, we start seeing videos taken by spectators that were there. Again, those things just at this point are creating more questions for us, and it is extremely frustrating that we're unable to get any answers at this point, either out of the Secret Service or out of the FBI, who is conducting this investigation.
Congressman Michael Guest. Michael, I don't want to hit you with this cold, so if you don't know anything about it, I can understand it. But it was one thing I picked up in show prep last night or this morning, and you got to listen to this, because there's this thing about Iran. We knew that there was an assassination order going out from Iran against Trump. And then we have these encrypted phones and messages from this guy who doesn't look like he could pull off a deer hunt together as far as Crooks is concerned. Now listen to this. Tracking cell tower paths on targeted phones. The investigators have found that there is a single person that apparently frequently visited the Crooks' home. That's how they wondered who was this person, and they looked at the track on the cell tower path. So they charted it out, and this person, whomever it happens to be, was going to the Crooks' home, so they decided to check, and he frequently also visited Crooks' workplace. Okay, could be, that's understandable. But that very same person was tracked visiting a building in Washington, D.C. on June 26th. Of last year. That very same person who frequently visited Crooks' home, the workplace, also tracked in D.C., and that building was right next to or near the FBI office. So the same person tracked going numerous times to his home, his job, was also going to D.C. to a building that was near the FBI office. To add more mystery, another device associated with Crooks was detected in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Additionally, a device linked to Crooks' workplace traveled to Butler, Pennsylvania on July the 4th and July the 8th, but all of a sudden stopped all activity on July the 12th. Those are some things that have to be answered.
And as this investigation goes on, Paul, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And it's important for us to get those answers, and to get those answers in a prompt, timely manner. If there was some sort of conspiracy, if there were other people who knew what was going on, if there were people who were helping in the planning stage, helping provide the shooter either the weapon or the layout or the diagram of where the stage was going to be, and help put all this together, we need to know that. The American people need to know that. And those people need to be brought to justice. If this was instead a lone gunman in which he acted alone, then we need to work to put those rumors to rest. And the longer that we are in this phase of the FBI and the Secret Service not sharing information with the American public, the more these types of stories are going to continue to grow.
Since you were there, you saw it visibly in a tangible way. Does the two-shooter scenario play out to you more or less?
Based upon what I saw, again, without going into some of the information that you talked about and some of but just basing my decision based solely on being on the ground, I could see how you could have a lone shooter, how someone could have easily accessed the roof. I was able to find several access points on the ground where people could have climbed up on the roof. Again, if there was no.
But you don't think there's anything. You don't think there's anything to the two-shooter scenario?
Well, I'll tell you that.
Hold on. Let's continue that on the other side.
Yes, sir.
Michael Guest with me. One quick shot here, and this comes from X-Post. At what point are we going to start talking seriously that liberalism is actually a real mental disorder? And if we do, and it's verified, then we have not only an explanation of bizarre events, but the reality of a political party infected with this affliction of the highest levels of leadership. This post, generated by a new poll just released, that shows 1 in 3 Democrats, 1 out of every 3 Democrats polled, think Donald Trump faked his own assassination attempt. Michael Guest, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Amazing what people believe these days.
Yes. All right, I'm going to ask you this question one more time because I think we had some mix-up on it. But after you visited, you walked the grounds, you saw the buildings, you heard all of the chatter and everybody's talking. Does your belief that there may have been an additional shooter, a second shooter somewhere, somebody that we don't know shooting because of the sounds of the gunfire, et cetera, is that belief stronger or weaker? And do you think it was just Crooks himself?
I saw nothing at the scene. And again, now we were at the scene some 10 days after the shooting, but nothing at the scene that would lead me to believe that there was a second shooter. But there was a lot of things we didn't see. We didn't see the shell casings that were recovered. We haven't seen much of the video that individual shot. We haven't heard any of the radio traffic between law enforcement agencies. So while I saw nothing at the scene that would indicate to me right now that there are multiple shooters, I think it's too early for us to close that door, Paul. I think we can't say definitively, or at least I can't say definitively based on what I have, that there were not multiple shooters, but I did not see anything at the scene that would lead me to believe just from the scene alone that there was anyone else that would have been there as a shooter, a second shooter that day.
It blows my mind that they don't have the communication between the local law enforcement, the FBI, the snipers. They weren't all on the same channel. It would have been so easy. You give your head command guy a handheld phone with that channel from the Secret Service to use during this event, and they could all have been on the same line, same channel. And it just blows my mind that they didn't do that. I want to play one of your cohorts. This is Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. It's abbreviated. I've cut it down for brevity's sake. But your comments on this?
Now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
Director, do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. Was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president.
So your answer is he didn't. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with them
because you're under oath.
Immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. Wow. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey, Comparatori's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Wow. Do you guys have any more hearings with her, or is this the last one? I mean, is she going to be called back before another hearing?
She will be called back for multiple hearings before multiple committees. And look, that's just Exhibit A as to why she should resign. If she refuses to resign, that she should be terminated immediately. She didn't go to the scene. She's not talked to the agents. She did not review the op plan. She did not grant the additional resources that Trump security detail requested. Basically putting in motion the events of July the 13th. And then she refuses to answer questions. She'll get up and she'll say, we had a failure and we're going to fix it, but she's not holding anybody responsible. Nobody's been fired. The people that put this op plan together, which clearly was inappropriate, have not been fired. The people that were on the ground that day, none of those people have been terminated, and she still holds her position. And I think this is what frustrates the American people so much, is that within this administration, they never hold anybody responsible. People just continue to keep their jobs, even though we almost lost the life of a former president. And look, if we talk about, our withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we had individual service members who were killed that day, no one was held responsible for that. And so that's what is so frustrating about this president and about this administration, is their lack of holding anyone responsible for the actions and for the mistakes that they make.
The firefighter is dead. The other two people are still, is my understanding, in still rather serious condition. Hopefully they will make it. But it makes my blood boil a little bit when I hear people say, well, you guys ease up on this DEI stuff. These people are qualified, et cetera, or they wouldn't be put in there. No, they're not. They're put in there specifically to break the glass ceiling, and everybody ought to care about this. I don't know if the family and friends of this firefighter really cared about it that much. They do now, because logistically, reasonably, I think it's a good argument to say if everything was done like it's supposed to be done, and this woman was a veteran of the Secret Service and she knew what she was doing, this guy would still be alive. He would be there on Thanksgiving Turkey Day. He would be there for Christmas. But he's not. There's going to be a big void, and this is directly attributed to DEI.
Well, and Paul, I don't know the race, the sex. I know nothing about the people that developed the op plans on that day that decided not to secure that building, not to place Secret Service detail there. Whoever that person is, he or she, they need to be terminated. Whoever decided that they weren't going to put within the control center local law enforcement so that you could then be communicating seamlessly back and forth between the two, and instead they were going to have a federal command post and a local command post that were unable to talk to one another, that person needs to be terminated. And the person in charge of the Secret Service, who under her watch has had the first presidential assassination attempt since Ronald Reagan, she needs to be fired. And so heads need to be rolling at the Secret Service. Nobody's been fired. They're in a cover-your-ass type of moment. And it's frustrating to the American people, and I can promise you it's also frustrating to us as members of Congress as we're trying to get answers.
One of the reasons she hasn't even been there, she made that perfectly clear. One of the reasons that she wasn't there the day after or the day of, I forgot, but somebody on the panel mentioned this, that there was a big dinner party or something that she went to. It's unbelievable, but it's true. I think they're so insulated. When you have the Intelligence Committee on your side, from the FBI to the CIA, and you've weaponized the Department of Justice, Congress is not that threatening. I think that's what happens. Your thoughts?
Well, and I agree. And she knows, that her boss, Secretary Mayorkas, that he's not going to do anything. She knows that the president and the vice president aren't going to do anything. And so she basically, I believe, feels like that she can run her agency however she wants to, that there's no consequences, and she doesn't have to answer to anyone. And, at this point, we're going to shed light on what happened that day. We're going to shed light on the policies that led up to the events of July the 13th. And when President Donald Trump is reelected, we hope that President Trump will then take the information we've been able to gather and make the necessary changes within not only that agency, but within the Department of Homeland Security.
You got a lot of work to do.
Make sure that we do. But we've got to have a president who will implement.
Real quick here, only got a couple of seconds, and I know you've got to go, so I can't have you for another segment here, but were there any questions, you with your DA mind and your experience there, that haven't been asked yet?
Well, a couple. One is why we didn't have any drones up that day. As we were walking the field, there were drones, at least 2 drones, which were up, but controlled by the media, that were there covering our every move. And why didn't we have someone on the water tower? There's a water tower less than 100 yards away from the building on which the shots were fired. A great vantage point. You could have
very reasonable questions. Thank you, sir.